And welcome back to On the Road to Wellness with Dr. Stanley Himes. My name is Edgar Champagne. Thank you all for tuning in to CTV Beam. You know, last week we've talked about several things, and this week we're going to talk about the benefits of marriage. Dr. Himes, there are two categories. There's a good marriage and a bad marriage. Let's talk about the bad ones first.
We could say I've been through a bad marriage, and so have you.
A few, yeah.
And we're going to talk about the bad things can happen that if you're in a bad marriage, stressful marriage, and what it does to your health. You have a weakened immune system. So chronic stress of an unhappy marriage can weaken your immune system, especially by constant marital conflict. This results in increased levels of the stress hormone cortisol. We've talked about cortisol before in the sleep cycle and how important it is. And we're going to talk next week about stress and what it does to you. But we know that a couple out at UCLA, a married couple, performed a study on 14 couples, and they were aged 22 to 77, and they were married an average of 12 years. And they split them into two groups. One, they did a supportive talk between the partners, and the second discussion would involve latent topics the partners would try to resolve. And before the discussion, they used a small suction device on their skin to inflict a little blister. Notably, the blisters healed more slowly after the conflict-heavy discussions than the more peaceful ones. In other words, you may heal better when you're getting along better with your spouse, your partner. The second thing that a bad marriage can do is your heart disease rate can increase. Higher risk of developing coronary artery disease, and men and women both seem particularly prone to heart disease because of increased blood pressure, increased cholesterol, and putting on weight, increased body mass index.
Let me ask you, when we are in these discussions and they modulate to an argument and you're raising your voices, do we know what chemicals make us breathe hard and increase the blood pressure?
Well, we talked about the fight or flight syndrome that you have and the stress that's involved, and that involves cortisol. And when you do that, that releases cortisol, and your body is ready to either fight the prey or get away. So if you're in a stressful marriage where you're constantly arguing and bickering, that cortisol is always at a high level. And cortisol, as it has to the immune system, dampens the immune system. It's like the brake. If without cortisol, the immune system will go wild, crazy, and just cause all kind of damage. So cortisol breaks it. But if you have too much cortisol, you're putting the brakes on. And the way I like to describe it is, if your body is open to the atmosphere and bacteria, if you have too much cortisol, it leaves the door open. So all the bacteria can get in. So your defenses are down.
Does exercise or any kind of leaving the room, or what are some things we can put in place to kind of bring it down?
What they found is that in a bad marriage, if people can come together, discuss the problem, and come to a resolution, then cortisol comes back down.
I see.
So it's a matter of being able to talk out your differences and move on. It's when you feel like you're walking on eggshells, you're afraid to say something, terrible.
How about diabetes risk increase?
It increases your diabetes risk. So stress causes increased blood sugar levels. Now that's caused by cortisol again. So remember, we have our fight or flight. If you're having to run away from a problem in a stressful situation, your cortisol is up, you need glucose for your muscles to be ready to go. So that's why your glucose is up. You also have higher rates of obesity, and also in a stressful marriage, people tend not to exercise like they should, so they put on weight. The other thing is you can develop harmful habits, smoking, drinking alcohol, using drugs. So for women in particular, the health benefit of marriage depends on the health of the marriage. So women in happy marriages were thinner, gained less weight, and over time had much lower cholesterol levels. And it appears to be because women seem to be more sensitive to negative aspects of relationships than men. So let's go on to talk about the positive effects of a happy marriage. So that's what we're here to talk about.
Well, for one thing, we know you'll have a healthier heart.
Your heart will be healthier. You'll have less prone to heart attack, And married people, if they have a heart attack, they survive it, as opposed to single people or other people.
Wow.
You have less chance of stroke. Married people have been found to have 64 lower chance of fatal strokes married men have than single men. So there's a huge difference there. It encourages safe behavior. Married people don't do stupid stuff. They don't do risky behavior. They don't use IV drugs. They don't do all kind of crazy stuff. Whereas if you're single, particularly young, you do a lot of risky behavior, dangerous driving, all kind of crazy stuff.
Well, Will Smith just bungee jumped on his 50th birthday. Is that safe behavior, bungee jumping?
No. But it could be fun. A good marriage, a happy marriage, lowers your stress levels. And stress is linked to diabetes, heart disease, and cancer. The key is to have a happy marriage. Support from your spouse reduces stress. You know, if you have a spouse that's supportive, you don't have to worry about all this stuff. And so that brings down your cortisol and you are more relaxed. One of the other things before we go to break is that you recover from major surgery faster. So married couples, they've done studies. In a happy marriage, they recover much faster, they get to work sooner, and they heal faster.
Yeah. I was impressed with that because you said you can recover from strokes better if you're married.
Right. Remember we talked about the immune system.
Yeah.
People who are happily married have fewer colds, they don't get sick as often, and I think that helps as far as healing. You heal faster, you heal better.
Okay. Well, we're going to come back in just a little bit with Dr. Stanley Himes on the road to wellness at CTV Beam. We're going to talk about lowering the risk and development of mental illness and many more subjects. So you stay with us. You're on CTV Beam. And Dr. Himes, I'd like to ask you a question I want to cover as well under the heading of spasms. Will marriages cause spasms?
What kind of spasms?
Muscle spasms.
Oh, muscle spasms. Well, stress can cause all kind of things like that. They can cause tension headaches. And next week, we're going to be talking about the negative effects of stress. So if you're in a happy marriage, that will give you more of a sense of well-being. You don't have to worry about so many things. We're going to talk about the fact that your blood pressure will be better, your mental health will be better, you have better lung function. We talked about a few weeks ago sleep. You will sleep better.
Yeah.
All of these things in a happy marriage are positive aspects to your health.
You're on the road to wellness with Dr. Stanley Himes and Edgar Champagne, CTV Beam. We'll be right back.
Marie, you have prediabetes.
Prediabetes? I don't have time to eat right or exercise. I'm a busy mom.
Oh, you're a busy mom.
Yeah.
This is great news. Busy moms never get prediabetes.
Wait, what?
Let me just... Yeah, this is all the people at risk for prediabetes, and way over here, busy moms. No?
Welcome back, and you're on the road to wellness with Dr. Stanley Himes. I'm Edgar Champagne at CTV Beam. We talked about healthier heart, less chance of strokes, encouraging safe behavior, lower stress. But in arguments, in a bad marriage, let's go back to that for a second.
Right.
In a bad marriage, who wins the argument? Can you win?
No, there's no winners. My mother told me, and my grandparents told me, and I've heard this in many places, that you don't win an argument. As a man, it is, if you win the argument, you end up losing because your wife's unhappy. So it's just, you agree to disagree, and then you move on.
I see.
So when you lose, you win.
Okay,
That's it.
Very good.
That's how I look at it.
I see. Well, we're talking about the good marriages, the benefits of a good marriage. How about recover better after major surgery?
Right, we talked about that, but your blood pressure will improve. You will have lower blood pressure. We've noted that people in a happy marriage have lower blood pressure and have a lower risk of developing high blood pressure. There's a lower risk of developing mental illness. The risk of dementia is lower. Married men and women have a 43% lower chance of developing dementia as they age.
I see.
And one thing that's you might not think about, married couples have better lung function. We found that in seniors who are married, they have better lung function. I talked about this in last part about you have better sleep. as relates to cancer, happily married couples are likely to survive cancer for a longer period of time, and there's less likely to have advanced cancer at the time of diagnosis. And I think this comes from the fact that, particularly with men, men are reluctant to go to the doctor. And when men are married, their spouse would say, look, honey, you need to get down to the doctor and see about this. Men will go, oh, no, don't worry about it. And so what happens is you may find, if it's a cancer or something, you find it at an earlier stage.
Yeah.
And both spouses work to keep the other one healthy and making sure they take care of themselves.
Because you're on that journey together.
You're on the journey together, and you want your spouse to be healthy, and you want to be on the road to wellness together, and you don't want your spouse getting sick. So you make sure that they take care of themselves.
Well, how about better sex?
Yes, buddy. That's what I'm talking about. So married couples, their sex life may not be on fire, but they are extremely satisfied. If you take surveys of people, married couples, 51% of married couples are extremely satisfied, whereas when you look at singles, they're 36% were extremely satisfied or cohabitants. So they have a better sex life. You have to work at that. You have to have a date night. You got to make sure that the kids don't intrude, because what's good for the kids is for both the mother and father to have a happy marriage. Yeah. That is what makes for a happy home.
You find a lot of times when women have married up, in a sense, and they are laying there faking, in a sense, is there an intelligent way to speak up and kind of, because we've been reading material, some of us lay people, about how to speak up and say what you want, what it takes to please that person.
It's called communication. If your spouse doesn't know what's going on, then they can't do anything to improve. So lines of communication have to be open. Both people have to be honest with the other person as to what they want and what they're not getting. So if you're not getting something, you need to speak up. Both of them. And if you both speak up and you both work so that both people are getting exactly what they want, you have a happy marriage.
Yeah, and you can't expect that in one or two exercises or sessions to be improved or corrected. It'll take time.
It takes time. It takes work. It takes work.
Yes, sir.
But you have to be honest. I mean, it's just like you just say, hey, I'm not getting what I want. Can you do A, B, and C? In a marriage, and I believe this, and the church believes this, there's nothing out of bounds as long as the husband and the wife agree, as far as sex is concerned. So if you both agree, you both feel comfortable with it, hey, let's go.
Yeah. Well, research is proving, and I believe this, that married couples live longer. Talk about that.
Right. Married couples live longer. They have a lower mortality rate, including lower risk of death from accidents, disease, self-inflicted injuries, and suicides. And the longer a person is happily married, the lower their mortality risk relative to an unmarried person. So the longer you're happily married, the healthier you are. And this association between marriage and decreased mortality is seen across many, many cultures all over the world. Now, married men have better physical health and live longer. Married women have better mental health than single women, less depression, less anxiety, and other mental illnesses. Every study of mortality and marital status shows that unmarried of both sexes have higher death rates, whether by accidents or suicide.
I see. Okay. How about the benefits of for the heart when you're married?
So I think one of the things that's really important is, in a happy marriage, stress is reduced, cortisol levels reduce, so stress is reduced. So we know that in high stress periods, such as a bad marriage or bad job, work, whatever, high stress periods, we'll talk about that next week, your cortisol levels are higher and therefore your glucose is higher, and we know that those people have a much higher rate of heart attacks. So that recent study of 25,000 people in England found that among people who have a heart attack, those who are married were 14% more likely to survive and were able to leave the hospital 2 days sooner than single people having the same heart attack. So how does that work? It's all about your immune function. It's all about your immune system. So remember, cortisol is a brake on the immune system. Higher levels of cortisol, which reflects stress, will lower your immune system, and happily married couples have much lower rates of cortisol.
Okay. All right. Behavior improves with marriage?
Right. We talked about that before. Married people take fewer risks. They eat healthier diets. They maintain healthier lifestyles. They keep regular doctor's appointments and follow the doctor's recommendations. Honey, now you heard the doctor told you that you need to do A, B, and C.
Right.
Now, because I was there listening to him, and you're going to do it. And they make sure that you listen and you follow the doctor's recommendations. So all of those kind of behaviors improve. You don't go out drinking with the guys, getting tore up, drinking too much alcohol, and we'll talk about that in another segment about the negative and positive effects that alcohol can have.
Well, what if the spouse doesn't go to the doctor and you're sitting there listening? You and I, for example, if you have a doctor, you're a doctor, but you've got a doctor.
Right.
If Mrs. Himes doesn't go and he's saying stuff to you and you simply forgot something,
Mrs. Himes will be there.
she's going to be there.
As well as if she goes to the doctor, I will be there.
But in some cases they can't because of work or obligations, appointments, or what have
I will
you.
tape the appointment.
I see.
And then she could play, I can play, on your phone, you could just tape it.
I see.
Like the video.
Tape it, yeah, record it.
Yeah. You just don't do the video, and you just have the doctor talk,
Yeah.
and then you play it back for, so that your spouse can hear it. And your spouse said, oh, so he said you need to take this medicine for this particular thing, and you need to exercise and do these things to improve your health. So you're going to do that, aren't you?
Yeah. What about the prescription that the doctor might give you in terms of pills? Why do people have a problem swallowing pills? And some people don't like them.
Well, I'm not quite sure why some people have trouble swallowing pills. I have trouble swallowing certain types of pills. Now, the oblong ones, I don't have any problem with. So, I don't know. But when it comes to marriage, your spouse will help you swallow that pill.
All right, then. Mental health improves when you're married. And so we're going to get back with Dr. Stanley Himes. We are talking about the benefits of marriage, good and bad. You're on the road to wellness with Dr. Stanley Himes and Edgar Champagne of CTV Beams.
But I want to say when we come back, we're going to talk about cohabitation. So how does that affect your health versus someone who's single versus someone who's married versus happily married couples? So there's an old saying with cohabitation, when you buy the cow, why buy the cow? When you can get the milk for free.
Free. That's coming up on CTV Beam, ladies and gentlemen. Dr. Stanley Himes, you're on the road to wellness. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be right back.
It takes less than 1 minute to find out if you may have prediabetes. You can do it here. But you probably won't. You're busy. Kids, work, show coming back in 48 seconds. So let's do this now. Hold up one finger if you're a man, women, 0. 3 more fingers if you're over 60, 2 over 50, 1 over 40. If you're not sure, keep in mind you're sitting on a couch right now, so 1 more finger if you're not very active. 1 finger if yes, 0 if no. 1 yes, 0 no. Next, find the body type that looks most like you and hold up that many fingers while I look around awkwardly. And that's it. If you're holding up 5 fingers or more, you probably have prediabetes. Sorry to be so blunt, but hey, you're busy. Just go to the site.
Welcome back. You're on the road to wellness with Dr. Stanley Himes. My name is Edgar Champagne. Dr. Himes, we're talking about the benefits, the good and bad of marriage. One thing we know works real well is cohabitation. Let's talk about cohabitation.
Well, no, it doesn't work well. No can do. So the problem, cohabitation violates the institution of marriage by lacking true commitment. So people who cohabitate, it's kind of like, well, let's try it out. Let's try the car out before we buy the car.
Yeah.
Well, the whole saying, why buy the car when you can get the milk for free?
Yeah.
Now, definition, living together in a sexual relationship without being married. That's cohabitation.
Okay.
So reasons people cohabitate: increased intimacy, they think, less complicated dissolution. So if you are cohabitating, you can just say, well, look, I'm tired of you. I'm leaving.
Out the door.
So I'm out the door at the drop of a hat. People say that their other reasons are they're testing compatibility. Can we get along? Let's better learn each other's habits and character. Well, I'm of the belief that when you date somebody, you can certainly learn their character. I mean, that's what dating, the whole dating scene is all about. And it doesn't take years to learn whether someone is for you and you're compatible and their character. Because in a dating situation, people tend to put on airs and put on their best face. But if you date somebody over a period of time in different situations, you will see the person's true character because they're going to get angry, they're going to be whatever. How do they react? How do they treat you when they're angry? How do you communicate? You can do all that without having to live under the same roof. So there have been several studies that have been done about cohabitating couples. What are the deleterious health effects of cohabitating? What would you say?
Maybe getting hit with a pot from arguing?
Yeah, there's much more violence with couples who cohabitate. There is abuse, particularly of women, much more, significantly more. High risk of physical, emotional, and mental abuse. Unstable relationship. There's an increased risk of drug abuse. Violent relationship can lead to depression, suicide, homicide, or death. So when you listen to the news, you'll hear about some poor child that's been brought into the world in a cohabiting couple. They're not married, or the woman's boyfriend comes in and murders the child or beats the child to a pulp. Those are cohabiting couples. Those are not happily married couples. So there's a lot of violence that can be in these relationships.
We're talking about the fact of cohabitation not being good for you. What is the best solution to refrain from cohabitation?
So couples living together have the lowest level of premarital satisfaction compared to other living arrangements. Married couples that cohabitated prior to marriage have poor communication skills and discussing their problems because they are in a cohabiting relationship many times for years where, well, look, I'm going to leave, or they've left the situation, then they come back. They left and they've come back. And that doesn't really breed good communication skills and being together as a couple and working together. Cohabitating couples are less sexually committed and trustworthy. There's a lot of people stepping out when they're cohabitating. Now, that happens in marriages, but cohabitating, it's very high.
Okay. Well, how about if we had a summary of cohabitating and all the information we need to dispense on that, what would be something, where would you start?
Well, the fact that couples that cohabitate, there's an increased risk of drug use, physical, mental, and emotional abuse, and the rate of violence is double that of married couples and cohabiting couples. Severe violence was 5 times higher for cohabiting couples. And they've done studies where they've talked to happily married couples and cohabiting couples to see who have higher, and married couples have a higher level of happiness. They're happy with their spouse, they're happy with their life. And cohabiting couples tend to have a much higher rate of depression than married couples.
Do we know of any studies since we've progressed since a more promiscuous society, Dr. Himes? Do we have any studies on the gay and lesbian cohabitating?
They're just starting to do those studies, but I think some of the early studies show that they're the same.
They're the same. I see. Okay.
Gay and couples and lesbian couples that are married and in a committed relationship have higher satisfaction, and those that are cohabiting have higher rates of violence and all the other things with heterosexual couples.
Okay. Well, good marriage, bad marriage, cohabitation. Let's kind of review a little bit, and I think we're going to play a game in a second or so.
Right.
Yeah.
I also want to say that people who are cohabiting, if they should get married, they are much more likely to end in divorce. Now, the divorce rate currently is 50%. people who cohabitate for a period of time and then get married, that divorce rate is much higher. Much higher. It could be 75, 80%. It's much higher.
Because you can look back down the road and see some of the issues and problems you all have had and how well you dealt with them. And
Right. And they may not have dealt with them very well.
Yeah.
And one person may have been stepping out on the other one. They may have walked out, all kind of stuff. And now we're married.
Yeah. Wow.
And, I believe that God made marriage difficult to get out of. I liken it to like an envelope with a stamp on it. In a marriage, it's hard to get that stamp off of that envelope. Now,
Yeah.
cohabiting couples, the stamp's just sitting there and it can just, the wind can blow it and it'll blow it right off. There's no commitment.
I see. Okay, there's no glue.
Right. There's no glue.
All right. Well, let's look back again about the health benefits of a good marriage, though. Let's talk about that again, because people need to remember that. Do the blistering part again for me, will you? Where you're saying that people who heal better when there's less stress.
Less stress. That's right. Remember, we talked about cortisol and the fact that it is a brake on the immune system. So, if your immune system is not protecting you, then you will not heal as fast and such. So if you have a happy marriage, your stress levels will be lower, your cortisol will be lower. So because of that, you will have lower rates of cholesterol, therefore you will have lower rates of heart disease, lower blood pressure, lower rates of diabetes, you will sleep better. All of these things point to married couples, particularly as you get 10 years and longer, have much better mortality rates, they live longer, and they have fewer health problems.
Can you talk about when people are married and how the friendship forms? That bond seems to be beneficial when you got a friend. You know that's your friend.
Right.
Because you've been with that person. You
That's
trust
right.
them.
They're your best friend. And you can trust them with anything. You're totally committed to that person. And it's great because a good marriage is you are looking out for that person, they're looking out for you. So you do stuff for them, and married couples can say, well, I think my wife needs this, so I'm going to do this for her. You don't have to ask.
Yeah.
Because after a while, you know the person. And the fact when they do something for you, they don't have to ask. You go, wow, that's great. And you can say, man, I feel great.
Right, right. When you left home for work that day and you realized there was maybe she was going to eat cereal that morning, you needed some milk, she brought the milk home and that saved her a trip.
That's
Stuff
right.
like that.
Yeah.
Looking out for the other one. I get it.
Anything that the person needs that you can think of that you can do for them is great.
That's great.
And the other thing about sex is that sex begins not when you come home, it begins in the morning. Okay?
That's right.
So, it's foreplay. But that's another day.
Another day. Okay. What about that game now you were telling us
So we're going
about?
to talk about the marriage versus being single game. So we're going to show these slides on the screen. So slide 1 shows a married couple and shows a single person. So slide 2, finances. Okay, if you compare the married couple versus single, finances are better, bing, 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 in the married couple. Thank you very much. Because it's ours and it's together versus just mine.
I see.
Okay. So, next slide, exercise. So, we're going to compare married couple versus single. What would you think, who would be better off, the single person or the married couple?
For his exercise?
Yeah.
Probably, it seems like the single person because they could just go and do it, but I bet the married couple has a better ratio.
Right, they do. So on the slide it goes, want to work out? Not really you. No, more noodles? Well, your spouse will say, no, we need to work out. But one of the things that's true about married couples that's over singles is you will gain weight, particularly in the first year, because your wife's cooking for you, you're cooking, you're happy together, you're going to gain weight. Sex. We talked about that before. The married couples, well, honey, I think you look good in this. You bring that home to your spouse and it's, sparks fly.
Yeah.
Singles, well, you don't watch this movie on Netflix or whatever, who cares? Let's talk about sleep.
Okay.
The married couples tend to get better sleep, have better sleep pattern. Now, where that can be a problem is if someone has snoring and sleep apnea and keeps the other person awake. That can be a problem. Expenses. Again, the married couples, since they have more money, they can do better with expenses and saving than singles. Singles just say, well, I'm going to get what I want. Pets. Married couples tend to have more pets,
right,
because they're in the family. So next week, we're going to talk about the deficits and the bad things that can happen because of stress, because of chronic stress on people. And we're going to talk about the health effects of stress. And they are very deleterious.
Dr. Stanley Himes, and you're on the road to wellness with Edgar Champagne at CTV Beam. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week on the road to wellness.